They lie like a handful of emeralds, scattered across 5,000 kilometers of tropical seas between India and Australia. They have been called the Spice Islands, the East Indies. They are a treasure house of natural and man-made beauty known to the world as Indonesia. Indonesia is the 5th largest nation on Earth. It's 13,500 islands, home to more than 150 million people, speaking some 500 different languages. It is an unparalleled assortment of peoples and places, of sights and sounds, of exotic tastes and aromas, of treasure and trivia. It is a nation of people who live in close harmony with nature and who seem to draw their vitality from the very soil and seas that sustain them. Indonesia was one of the world's best-kept tourism secrets. But this is changing as more islands and cultures are made easily accessible. The first recorded tourist to Indonesia was a Chinese monk, shipwrecked on the island of Java in the year 412 AD. A far cry from today's tourist who is whisked across the world in the luxury of a modern jetliner to step into a land filled with the memories of violent natural upheavals, of triumphs and tragedies, of monuments to religious fervor and vanished kingdoms. It is a land rich in natural wonders, of rare and unique animal and plant life. For thousands of years, the economy of Indonesia has been based upon wet rice agriculture, though today, agriculture has been reinforced by the discovery of considerable oil reserves and the introduction of many new crops, such as tea and coffee. But the future of Indonesia rests in the hands of her principal resource, her people. Modern Indonesia is vibrant and dynamic. The largest city is a colorful mixture of people from every part of the archipelago. Cities like Jakarta are melting pots, an endless delight to the people watcher. It's not just the modern cities that bring tourists to Indonesia from every country in the world. Every day, at ports of entry like Denpasar Airport, on the magical island of Bali, the world's airlines bring more tourists from all parts of Europe, from the Americas, and from Asia and Australia. It seems the world has rediscovered Indonesia. They all come to enjoy the fabled climate, to suntan on the famous beaches, to take their ease in some of the world's most luxurious playgrounds. And there is luxury aplenty to suit every budget, as the hotel chains of the world embark on a building drive to accommodate the new boom. But behind the barong dance, the cocktails and water skiing, lies the real Indonesia. An Indonesia that has witnessed the rise and fall of empires and religions. For the tourists prepared to look beyond the delights of the hotel and the nightly cultural show, there waits a treasure trove of new experiences. The new rush of hotel building has encouraged the modern Indonesian architect to draw on this rich and varied heritage for inspiration. Damawan Prawiroharjo is the architect of the exotic Nusa Dua Hotel, part palace, part temple, on the island of Bali.
Indonesia is a land rich in cultural diversity, and this richness is most apparent in our architecture. It is a nation formed by wave after wave of different ethnic groups. They arrived, settled, were displaced, intermingled, and evolved. Each group contributes its own individual ideas.
The styles of traditional dwellings seem endless in Indonesia, but all homes have several things in common. They are raised above ground, partly for coolness, partly to keep out unwelcome callers of the animal, reptile, and in the past, human varieties. And because Indonesians prefer to live close to water, they frequently build their villages on stilts at the river or ocean's edge. In this nation of islands, ships have always been important, and in Indonesia, many cultures have adopted the ship as a model for their houses, like these on the island of Nias. Nearly 3,000 kilometers away on the island of Sulawesi, the ship theme is repeated in the houses of the Torajan people, preserving the form of the ships that first brought them to the island. Symbols of wealth and position have always been important in every Indonesian culture. This impressive display of buffalo horns marks its Torajan owner as a man of substance who has sacrificed many of the valuable beasts in funeral rites. Everywhere in Indonesia, symmetry and form have combined the elegant and the practical, as with these high, steep roofs, offering relief from both tropical sun and monsoonal downpours. Most of the home building styles can easily be seen by today's visitor at Taman Mini, a huge tourist complex just outside Jakarta.
Religions too had a major influence. From the year 400, both Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms rose and fell. This period of Indian culture, lasting perhaps for 1,000 years, was followed by the gradual spread of Islam and finally Christianity. Each of these religions inspired the construction of monuments, and with the hundreds of localized animistic cults, evolved architectural works that are a spectacular mixture of the grand and the simple, the elegant and the practical. They gave Indonesia a unique architectural heritage virtually unknown to the rest of the world. For the visitors, Indonesian architecture can provide some fascinating insights and contrasts. Somehow, our modern cities coexist in harmony with more traditional forms of both dwellings and places of worship.
Jakarta, capital of Indonesia, on the island of Java, is a unique city. It's home to 7 million people, which makes it a metropolis by any measurement. But it's a metropolis with a very Asian character. There are tall buildings, modern shopping complexes and modern sporting arenas certainly, but frequently they are separated by blocks of old shop houses and Dutch and English colonial buildings. Somehow it all seems to fit, and the visitor will notice that modern Indonesia and her architects certainly haven't lost their taste for monuments on a grand scale.
When the architect has the opportunity to combine both traditional and modern, it is indeed a labor of love.
The visitor to Indonesia's capital cannot miss seeing one of its most imposing buildings, Istiqlal Mosque. With its rakish minarets and massive dome, the Istiqlal Mosque, made predominantly of white marble, is said to be the largest in Eastern Asia. The tourist is welcome to visit any time when prayers are not in progress. Islam arrived in Indonesia around the 13th century. It came peacefully with Muslim traders and established itself in the major trading ports. One of its principal teachings, that all men are equal before God, would have added to its appeal to Indonesians of every culture. Over the centuries, it became the guiding light in Indonesian spiritual life. Until today, about 80% of all Indonesians declare themselves Muslims. Mosques come in all shapes and sizes, from simple provincial structures to the imposing grandeur of the more splendid mosques in areas of large population. On the northernmost extremity of the island of Sumatra stands the great mosque of Banda Aceh, known as Masjid Raya. For sheer symmetry and beauty and traditional form, it stands alone. The great mosque, though built of wood, was constructed without a single nail, whilst the inside is an exquisite vision in white marble, with delicate open lattices, columns, and minaret-shaped arches. It replaces the original mosque, destroyed along with Banda Aceh's fortress and the Sultan's palace, when a Dutch army of 10,000 men attacked and captured the city in 1878. With over 140 million people registered as Muslims, Indonesia is by far the world's largest Muslim nation. And while Islam is predominant, there exists complete freedom of worship. There is an almost infinite variety of traditional beliefs, together with many adherents to Christianity, Hinduism, and Buddhism. In 1815, on the plains of central Java, near Yogyakarta, the excavation was begun on a mound reputed to conceal a great temple. What was unearthed was the glory that is Borobudur. Largest Buddhist monument, 300 years older than Angkor Wat, is a prayer in stone, a mandala, a model of the Buddhist universe. The pilgrim ascends level by level, arriving finally at the summit in a sphere of formlessness, a desired state that follows enlightenment. The galleries of Borobudur are decorated with exquisitely carved educational reliefs, an illustrated textbook in stone of the path to enlightenment. Here in the sphere of formlessness, 72 Buddhas, transcendental beings, once formed a group of cosmic power as they sat in eternal meditation. When Borobudur was being excavated, much speculation existed as to what would be found under the central stupa, the bell-like covering over many of the Buddhas. Most argued that the stupa must be empty to symbolize the ultimate attainment of enlightenment and formlessness. The local regent said no, there are Buddhas yet to come. There will be a statue, but it will be unfinished. When the stupa was opened, this unfinished Buddha was produced. Was he really there, or did the workmen simply wish to please their kindly regent? No one knows, so here he sits in eternal contemplation beneath a tree instead of his stupa. Some 60 kilometers from Borobudur, and still quite close to the city of Yogyakarta, is the soaring complex of Prambanan, the largest Hindu chandi, or temple, in Indonesia. Built around the middle of the 9th century, it was possibly intended as a Hindu counterpart to Borobudur. Now it is a popular and easily visited tourist attraction. The magnificent temple has been beautifully restored, and restoration continues on the other temples. Prambanan is famed for the artistry of its decorative reliefs. The central chandi also contains exquisite ancient statues of a variety of Hindu deities. At the other end of Indonesia, not far from Bali, lies the predominantly Catholic island of Flores, and on this easternmost tip, the town of Larantuka. A Portuguese colony for more than 300 years, Larantuka is famous for a unique Easter ritual. As in Seville, Spain, the statue of the Virgin accompanies a symbolic black coffin of the Savior through the streets to the beat of muffled drums. The coffin is conveyed to the cathedral, where it lies in state until nightfall. hooded bearers carry the black coffin in another procession. It is a modified version of the Via Dolorosa, a 4-hour candlelit celebration of the Stations of the Cross. An unusual tradition performed as part of this Easter ritual is the lighting of the graves. Every grave in Larantuka, in fact, every grave on the island, is made bright with candles of remembrance. Thousands upon thousands of candles, an eerie but moving custom. On the island of Bali, Indonesia's best-known tourist destination, ritual looms large. Here, the customs of an ancient and rich Indonesia are as fresh and alive as they were a millennia ago. In Bali, even a funeral is a truly spectacular event. In many parts of Indonesia, it is believed that when a person dies, the soul is resentful and potentially harmful. So rites, such as rapidly turning the coffin of the deceased at crossroads and rivers, have been designed to confuse the soul and discourage it from returning to its former home. Here, a Raja is borne in state to his cremation, attended by hundreds of his people. The tower bearing the Raja's body is carefully positioned next to a ramp, where the body is gently and reverently brought to ground level. Then, in a ceremony basically Hindu, but adapted by the Balinese to embrace beliefs and deities far older, the funeral reaches its dramatic climax. The Raja's body, encased in the body of a ceremonial bull, is consumed by fire, and to music of the gamelan orchestras and the dancing of the barong, a good spirit, so are all the regal trappings of his cortege put to the fire. Across the Java Sea, just a 1-hour flight on a scheduled commercial air service, and high amid the rugged peaks and plateaus of the island of Sulawesi, lived the Toraja. Although isolated in their landlocked haven for centuries, the Toraja have recently converted to Christianity. Still, they cling to many old ways, as in this funeral rite. Following a Christian ceremony, the deceased is placed in a bier shaped like a tonkanon, a Torajan house, and as in Bali, 1,000 kilometers and a totally different culture away, the bier is rapidly turned to confuse the spirit and discourage its return. The Torajans are famous for their funeral feasts, which require an enormous outlay of wealth. This can take time, up to 25 years, during which time the body lies in state. Nowadays, interment is in vaults, but the Torajans were traditionally buried in tombs cut into the faces of cliffs. The cliff graves, with their effigies of the dead, can be visited and viewed by the tourist. These effigies, carved in the likeness of the deceased, are called Tau-Tau. They are regarded as sacred and cannot be touched, except to have their clothes changed and offerings placed in their palms. The Torajans enjoy a stable, if complex, society and are blessed with productive land and a pleasant climate. Although isolated for centuries, Toraja land is now readily accessible by air and well serviced by Indonesia's internal airlines, one of which is Merpati.
Merpati flies to all parts of Indonesia. We have 59 aircraft flying to 150 destinations.
Captain Kosasi Ghani has been with Mapadi for over 15 years.
A modern internal airline is essential to a country of our size. We fly people on business, tourists, government people. We carry the mail and all kind of cargo.
Kosi and his family live in Jakarta, but he was born on the island of Lombok and has flown all over Indonesia.
Indonesia is beautiful from the air. The rice lands, the endless rainforests, volcanoes, grasslands, huge rivers, swamps, mountains, and tropical islands.
The impact of the aeroplane has been dramatic. Indonesia has over 13,000 islands large enough to be permanently inhabited, spread over 5,000 kilometers of oceans. It is one of the most diverse and fascinating corners of our planet. In a few short hours by modern aircraft, the visitor can experience astonishing contrasts in people, in terrain, and in flora and fauna. The lunar landscape of active volcanoes like Anak Krakatoa, all that remains of Krakatoa, which erupted in 1883, claiming 35,000 lives. The explosion so loud, it was heard in Sydney and Tokyo. Tourists can see prehistoric monsters on the island of Komodo, giant monitor lizards up to 3 meters long. One of the world's oldest species, they are relatives of dinosaurs that lived 100 million years ago. There are volcanic lakes, like these on Flores, separated only by low ridges, but completely different in color. Local legend has it that one lake contains the souls of sorcerers, the next the souls of sinners, and the third the souls of infants and virgins. You can experience rainforests and rivers and sleepy lagoons. There is the greatest diversity of traditional textiles in the world, like this warp ikat cloth being prepared on the island of Flores. It is hand-spun, then dyed, and woven on traditional looms. For the tourist, fortunate enough to have witnessed its weaving, it provides an elegant and serviceable memento. And always, there is the sea. To a nation of islands, it is a provider, a defensive moat, a highway and a barrier, made much less formidable by the introduction of the aeroplane. The Indonesians' involvement with water goes far beyond the shoreline. It's carried far inland. Every inlet, river and stream is a veritable highway, the easiest means of travel. The rivers are the source of water for cooking, drinking and washing. Frequently, the river is literally the main street. On one bank of the river, a mosque will be the center of a thriving Muslim community. On the other bank will live an equally prosperous Christian community. Yet, both communities will see themselves as members of the same village and will live in complete harmony. In Indonesia, the water, be it river or ocean, fresh or salt, is truly the great provider. Ujung Pandang was once the historic trading port city of Makassar. Today, even with its modern tourist hotels, The flavor of the Spice Islands can still be captured at its many wayside stalls where visitors can rub shoulders with the locals to share a simple meal of local delicacies. Sulawesi has long been the home of the extraordinary Bugis and Makassiris who still carry on a maritime trading tradition over 1,000 years old. Most Indonesian craft, both large and small, are built in villages like this one on the southern shore of the island of Sulawesi. Apprentices usually start work in the saw pit, where hardwood logs are patiently cut into rough planks. Later, the apprentice will graduate to the delicate and demanding art of shaping and fitting keels, ribs, and planks. Though modern metal hand tools have speeded the building process, there are no power tools. There are no plans or written records. The Penggawa, the master craftsman, carries all the details in his head. Just one feature that makes these craft unique is the fact that no iron nails or screws are used in their construction. Strength is achieved by accurate mortising and doweling of wood, reinforced by glue. The builder clans of this village will undertake any commission, from a small fishing prahu to a 40-meter pinisi trading schooner. Boats are usually built to order, and occasionally work stops and craft lie untouched for a couple of years whilst a client accumulates more funds. Today, in ports like Jakarta, pinisi schooners, the world's largest sailing fleet, can be seen unloading the commerce of every port of the Indonesian archipelago. For centuries, they sailed as far as Madagascar and northern Australia as traders and settlers, with occasionally a little piracy on the side. Off the west coast of Sumatra is the island of Nias, home to one of the world's most unique cultures. It is a primitive island rarely visited except by the occasional tourist ship and aircraft from the Sumatran city of Medan. The islanders enjoy a favorable climate and fertile soil. It is believed that Nias was primarily influenced by the Bronze Age Dong Song culture of North Vietnam. The culture is megalithic, expressing itself in massive works in stone and villages with beautifully paved streets and squares. In many of the villages, the houses are said to be copies of visiting galleons. The engineering of the chief's house in both wood and stone is of massive proportions. An unforgettable ritual these days enacted for tourists is the Fahombi, a remarkable performance in which acrobatic young tribesmen leap feet first over stone columns up to 8 feet high. An exercise that probably began as assault training for attacking neighboring villages. The Tulo Tolo is a traditional warrior dance, a powerful portrayal of ritual combat. But from where, one wonders, came the design of what is clearly a maned lion, an animal not known or recorded in all of Indonesian history. The island of Kalimantan, formerly known as Borneo, is the third largest island in the world. It is a mixture of inhospitable coastal swamps and dense inland rainforest. It also contains reserves of oil, gas, diamonds, and timber. Here on the mighty Mahakam River, another day begins. The villagers who live along the river are up and about early, intent on completing their day's work in the comparative cool of the early morning. This village is some 50 kilometers inland from the coastal city of Balikpapan, the scene of bitter battles in World War II. For the anthropologist and the zoologist, the river is a rich source of study material. The lower reaches were settled by Malays, Chinese and Javanese. The upper reaches became the province of many different light-skinned tribes of Mongolian extract, known to the world by the collective name of Dayak. The river Dayaks, who combined an uncanny skill with the blowpipe, with a natural ferocity and a tribal religious need to collect heads, were for centuries the feared scourge of Kalimantan's waterways. These days, the tourist can arrange to visit them in their ornately carved longhouses, traveling upriver in a high-speed longboat. The traveler is treated to a variety of terrain, now crossing broad lakes, now hemmed in by dense jungle, home to the orangutan, the hornbill, and the proboscis monkey. Ardan is a small trader. He plies his living up and down the highways and byways of the Mahakam River, negotiating for produce and crops such as cloves and pepper, or the highly prized beadwork and basketry of the Dayaks. These he will take to the larger villages, where they will be transshipped to larger vessels for the journey to the sea. Today, Ardan completes a deal to provide a quantity of supplies with Saidi, a friend in an outlying Dayak village. The negotiations are delicate, involving much bargaining. The deal struck. Ardan sets off on a journey which will take him through an Everglade wonderland which has only recently been made accessible to the adventure-minded tourist. It is a journey into the romantic Lord Jim territory of Joseph Conrad's books, an opportunity to examine from water level the rich life of the river. The town of Kota Bangun is a large one by Mahakam River standards, with its own mosque and busy market. Most of its population are settled along the river banks or live out over the river itself in houses built on stilts. For Ardan, it's all in a day's work. Here's the link in a chain that takes the produce of a Mahakam River Dayak, a descendant of merciless headhunters downriver, from where it will be shipped to cities all over Indonesia. After a day's exploring, oases like the opulent Hotel Benakutai and Balikpapan provide a welcome haven. Most Indonesian hotels feature a variety of cultural performances that allow the visitor to experience traditional art forms that would otherwise be extremely difficult to see. To most Indonesians, a life without dance, storytelling and theatre in its many forms would be unthinkable. And it is heartening to realize that tourism, far from debasing the various art forms of Indonesia, is actually encouraging their perpetuation. Each Indonesian linguistic or ethnic group has developed its own unique complement of performing arts, but all groups have several things in common. Ritual dancing, for example, is found everywhere, as is some form of social dancing. The steps, the story, and the rhythms are learned by rote. There are no written records. Master dancers, musicians, and storytellers pass on their craft to willing minds and bodies. Here in the central Balinese village of Peliatan, a child of 11 like Rita Mandela is already an accomplished dancer. In this little girl, the art of the Lagong, a type of Balinese royal court dance, reaches a rare degree of perfection. But behind the polished performer, given such casual appreciation by tourists, is a schoolgirl. Like any child in any country, she attends classes, sits exams, and suffers all the joys and frustrations of growing up. The difference for Rita is a discipline of dedication to her art that has little to do with entertaining tourists. Rita is a member of a family with an extraordinary history of achievement in the arts. Her mother, at 14, was a nationally famous dancer, and Rita has inherited her mother's talent, which has been developed since she was 5 years old. Like all Balinese children, Rita enjoys a close-knit family life. Her best friend and dancing partner is Sri, her cousin. School in Bali is much like school anywhere else, with the possible exception that in tropical Bali, classes start in the cool of the morning at 7 a.m. The education Rita and Sri receive is a standard modern one, with the inevitable reading, writing and arithmetic, plus great attention is paid to proficiency in the arts.
Kita putri Indonesia, sadar kewajiban semua.
It is not only the young who learn. The village gamelan orchestra, under the direction of Rita's uncle, rehearses daily. No written music is used, no parts noted for each instrument. The intricate interlocking rhythms are painstakingly memorized and rehearsed, the players learning by rote from a master musician who has either memorized or composed the entire score. Rita and Sri's grandfather, A. Mandela, is one of Indonesia's living treasures. A dancer and musician of genius, he has devoted his life to his art. Now he is 84, and his son Bagus has assumed the mantle of principal dancer. The old master effortlessly makes the transformation from doting grandfather to merciless taskmaster as he personally instructs aspiring young dancers in the subtlety of the Lagong. Again, every movement and sequence is learned by rote. To reach the desired degree of perfection will take thousands of hours. In Bali, art and religion are inextricably linked. Before any performance, there are offerings to be prepared, a process supervised and enjoyed by the girl's grandmother, who also has charge of the family temple. The aid of various deities is enlisted. Because the Balinese live their religion through their art, each generation finds the traditional way of life as fresh and fulfilling as the last. As in most Balinese villages, just about everyone is related, and the sounding of the kulkul summons the family to the compound to prepare for departure. It is interesting to note that the Balinese taste for the ornate extends further than temples and houses. Now begins a transformation that is more than just physical. In the luxurious dining room of the Nusa Dua Hotel, the tourists are finishing their dinner and looking forward to the Indonesian cultural show. Backstage, an Indonesian schoolgirl is engaged in a timeless ritual. When a Western dancer puts on costume, she pretends to be someone else. When a Balinese puts on costume, she becomes someone else. An ancient drama unfolds. To the tourist, it is a curiosity, but to Indonesians, it is a link with their past, enacted by their hopes for the future. And somehow, these children seem to typify all that the Western visitor finds so enchanting about this astonishing nation of Indonesia. Modern schoolgirls separated from their tourist audience by a few feet and 1,000 years of culture. This is a nation that has given the world some of its most sublime architectural triumphs. It has smoldering blue-grey volcanoes, dazzling white beaches, impenetrable green rainforests, lazy brown rivers. It has been swept by the world's great religions, colonized, explored, and exploited. It has known war and revolution, peace and prosperity. It is rich in natural resources and richer still in people. It is hundreds of different cultures, creeds and languages, working at long last towards a common goal. It is a proud, independent, and dynamic nation. It is Indonesia, and as it continues to encourage visitors by making every part of the archipelago more accessible with ever-improving facilities, it is slowly but confidently unveiling what has been the most mysterious corner of the mysterious East.